Welcome to Leadership Lunch Chat. I am here this Friday with my friend Jen Wilson. Hi, Jen. How you
Hi.
doing?
Good.
Good. So I am looking forward to our conversation today. Jen and I were talking about some of the things that have come up this past week in interactions that we've had, and over, it seems to be communication is resonating at the top. And we all struggle with it. And even those of us that are better communicators still struggle with hard communication, right? Like the communication downward or upward that is uncomfortable to have, but necessary to have. And so one of the things that's come up a lot is, there's this difference between where we feel there's not enough capacity to do all the work that's there. But when you look at the staffing, there's plenty of staff to get the work done. So when management looks at capacity, they're like, we are fine. We don't need to hire more people. And so what I have found, and Jen probably as well, is as you peel back the layers, there are people being used on work and people not being used on work. And it's easier to not use them than have the conversation, the hard conversation of whether, you can help train them, you can help get them up to speed. And, our own accountability of that is maybe we don't have enough time to spend with another person to be able to help them get up to speed. And it's easier to give it to someone who already knows. However, if we are ever going to get out of this chicken and egg situation, we have to kind of back up and look at our schedule and figure out where we can make time to have these conversations and to really understand the underlying issues of why someone's not understanding certain work and being able to help them through it. And if they aren't able to be helped, then that capacity needs to open up so you can get someone in that role that can help versus just complaining about the same person over and over and over. So, Jen, how often do you see this?
Always, every day. We call that, the people that you're not able to leverage or access or assign work to. We call it the secret do not use list. And that's a sad, there's a lot of sadness to that whole thing. And one is like, think about if you were on the do not use list, if you found out you were, if there was really like a written list, you saw your name on it, you'd be like, just how horrible that there's that feeling that you can't be, assigned things with quality or competence or whatever the issues are, and that no one's told you. So that's horrifying,
Right.
by itself. Just that idea is bad, bad, bad. But then worse is this like lulling ourselves into this false sense of, based on hours reports or capacity projections for the number of hours I have for the bodies that I have, like lulling myself into this false sense of security of being properly staffed when there's a skills mismatch or there's this do not use group. And it goes beyond service delivery, Amy. I was with a group of young people this week and we talked about legacy or traditional administrators.
Mm-hmm.
And that they're on the do not use list, that they might not have the technical skills for technology. They may not be able to adapt to the systems we have today, but they still work here. And there isn't really a full-time job anymore for them. And we won't hire any more administrators because we have enough headcount in administration. Like the ratio is right, but the skills and the true capacity are off. And so it's a very common problem, and it's steeped in two, like there are two enabling factors, and one is conflict avoidance.
Mm-hmm.
That's an enabling factor. And the other is like compassion and love. I have compassion for these people and I don't want to hurt them. As a leader, I don't want to hurt them. As a person who's frustrated by my inability to use them, I want to talk to somebody, but I don't want to hurt anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's those two things. And we would always say, wow, compassion and love and caring, those are good attributes, but they're not good if they hold back progress from the team. And I always tell people, you might be sparing the feelings of one and crushing the feelings of 20 others, and like, who am I trying to serve here, the greater good or the individual? And we want to always balance that. But like, is it cool to spare one person's feelings and cause a bunch of frustration and other negative feelings? And then also that overwhelm and negative feelings of frustration and kind of grossing out on us, being conflict avoidant and all that, they'll quit. Our highest and best performers don't want to be in an organization that supports low performers persisting. And so they'll quit. And when they quit, it puts even more pain and burden on the rest of the team. And so it's like this, who am I hurting? And I think, and we can manage poor performance or manage people whose skills are not going to be what we need with compassion, with love, with grace, and do it in a way that doesn't devastate the person that we're having to manage out.
Yeah.
And I just don't think people realize how important it is to build that skill set or to hire it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you got to hire out, get an HR consultant in there to help you do it.
Yeah.
And how much relief there is for the rest of the team when we admit it, face it, handle it. The team just rises up with lightness and sees potential and possibility to get real relief in the place. And it's huge. So anyway, see it all the time.
So much there to unpack. Couple things is, number one, sometimes it's because of compassion or love, or sometimes it's because you have bad memories of getting feedback and there's trauma behind that. And then you're afraid to do that when it would actually be helpful to someone else. So what I find is the worst thing is that you're talking about someone behind their back, but you're not actually helping them through the situation or giving them the respect that they're trying to show up and assume the best, that they're showing up to do their best job and they're not being told the things that they need to be told so that they can improve. So sometimes we have to take our own, learn from the past and be able to take what didn't work for you and make sure that when you go to give feedback that you are doing it, like you said, in a compassionate way, but in a way that isn't going to traumatize anyone else. But you can never know how something's going to land on someone. And so you've got to just know you're doing your best, because if someone's defensive, they're going to be defensive, but that's still not going to work in improving them. And you do have to go through that in order to know what the right path is. Secondly, the HR consultant. So I'm on the fence with this one. So I think there's a good use of an HR and a people consultant in an organization. And that good use, in my opinion, is to test and practice conversations. Make sure that they wouldn't adjust things that you would say to help you facilitate the conversation with the outcomes that you want. What I'm seeing is we are finally utilizing more HR and people professionals in our organization, but the way that we're using it is we'll just funnel our feedback through them. And then I don't have to give the feedback. And that then leaves the person where they can't have that conversation with you. It's still anonymous. And so I'm just left with this information, guessing who might have given it to me. And I don't then know how to approach which person with that information because I'm just guessing where it came from. And it leaves me as the person that's getting that feedback feeling probably even less cared about at that point, because the person that I'm directly working with didn't take the opportunity to work with me on the things and have the conversation, because a lot of times it's all perspective, right? Like I come into the conversation with perspective, you come into the conversation with perspective. As we work through a conversation, you might have other external circumstances that I am not aware of that caused my perspective. But I didn't know what those external circumstances were because I did not have that conversation with you. And so it is important to not utilize these resources as a crutch, that they are there to be helpful. They are there to coach. They are there to make sure that you do things, you know, there's no great training for this. So, you know, on an everyday basis, we can go to a training, like Jen and I both give training on it, but then there's practice and practice and practice and practice. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to go into a conversation like this, it's important you've prepared ahead of time what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, what kind of opening and conversation you're going to have, not just a delivery of what you want to say in that conversation, that there's a back and forth and respect for that human relationship. So this has just been something that I've been seeing more and more of and more conversations that I'm in. And I just want to make sure we kind of elevate the conversation of what's the best use and to still not slinker away from the conversation, even if we want to.
Well, and I'm going to jump somewhere maybe slightly off that and say that if the firm's large enough or progressive enough and they want to hire a talent advisor into every one of the service lines and have the talent advisor come alongside and deliver that feedback and be more of a dedicated HR person to the service line that has nothing to do with central HR that's got to be working on the firm's overall 13 elements of HR, which is a whole nother, live stream cast to discuss, then I can support that person being more involved in the feedback. But if you're trying to take your centralized talent function and turn them into individual feedback givers, they're not going to do anything strategic for us to grow the pipeline or really make sure our recruiting messages are best or think about performance management or learning and development or talent management or any of the things that we need to be doing at the corporate or firm level. And we see this all the time. We hire, we have HR people, but they're just buried in, they call it employee relations requests. I got this sticky situation. Will you tell them? And so I'm with you. I think we need to learn how to do it. And we need to learn how to do it because feedback isn't just delivered to talent. It's delivered to clients and it's delivered to prospects and it's delivered to referral sources. And like a great leader shares their views carefully with compassion, love, but clarity with everybody, not just like giving feedback to talent. It's not just that. These skills that we're talking about, communication skills, really, they're like a base level of leadership rung on the ladder. I've got to get these skills. And you're right, Amy, it only comes with practice. Like I can have knowledge of it. I can write down the acronyms to remember how to phrase things. But if I'm never practicing, then I don't have the skill. And so, but it is good to have a sounding board. It is good to have some frameworks to use. We've talked about frameworks in this live stream before. The easiest framework is keep, stop, start. And here are some things that are working that I really want you to keep doing. Here are some things that aren't working that I need to have you stop doing. And then here are some things that I need you to start doing. And that's a super easy framework. It doesn't always work. Like if we're in dire performance management. Going through keeps doesn't make a lot of sense. And if I'm trying to let you go, I'm not going to do keep, stop, start. But just for regular feedback, one of the thoughts I had was, like we have these tough cases, which are what I'm going to call lingering, long-term performance issues that need to be addressed. And those do require probably some coaching or consulting with HR experts, just to help you frame it, figure it out. How are we going to do this? There's also just people that come into the firm and they're not performing where we want them to be, and they're newer. And so we have a practice at Convergence that we do a 90-day keep, stop, start. We just do it for everybody. You don't pass to your 92nd day without a keep, stop, start. And we do that because I don't get to work with everybody who comes to work here. And I'm probably the one person that would be maybe the least tolerant, of going too far with somebody. I don't want somebody I don't want to be fakey with anybody. I don't know. So, but I might not have personal experience working with them to gauge, is this going to work? And so I want my team to center up and think about it and develop keep, stop, start feedback on the people that come into our place. And then we try to do that keep, stop, start every 12 to 18 months after. You can give somebody too much feedback and they can have too many things to work on. You want to give them plenty of time to grow and learn and develop in those things. So you don't have to do it all the time, but not having a cadence and a frequency and an expectation that we're going to have these conversations. That's one of the reasons this gets weird, because then when I have them, they're like random and no one else has gotten this kind of a conversation. And, if we just make them systematic, it gives us at least a place to start.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to knowing the people that work with you personally, because feedback doesn't always have to be a formal process, and it can be positive feedback. It can be constructive feedback, but when we know people personally, it makes things easier to have that conversation. And I've definitely seen there's a resistance to know people personally anymore. Like, and I don't know if it is a shift of after COVID, because we were in the office more, we go to lunch more, whatever it is, but taking that time instead of meeting in the office or meeting on Zoom, like actually meeting for lunch or going to coffee, and having a more relaxed conversation, so that everybody's spouse's name, their kids' names, what issues they're having in their life, that it's important to know people personally so that when feedback is given, it's more comfortable and they know that you care. And so not to be afraid to just ask someone to go to lunch. And I don't care if it's upward or downward or skip level, not necessarily all the people that you're always most comfortable with, is to make yourself a little bit uncomfortable and have those casual conversations so that when you meet someone with compassion, you've got more information about their life, what's going on in their life, and can handle that feedback in a different way.
Yeah. There's so much here. I was just thinking I think that if we don't stop and build these skills, like make a commitment, a personal commitment, to build them in ourselves, whether we can get them from our employer or whether we have to go externally and get them from, YouTube or something, and there's lots of great books. Crucial Conversations is a great book. Some of you might be readers. Amy and I both teach courses. We have a self-study, but there's lots of ways to get these skills. And I just think part of our problem here is this thing called, well, nobody's teaching me this, or nobody's expecting it of me, or my firm does a terrible job of this, or something like that. Like I'm just waiting for somebody else to solve even this skills problem that we have, that has us not having these conversations that are so important. and will make such a difference. They can be so transformative and actually inspiring. The other thing is just my experience is sometimes people turn around.
Yes.
You can be on the do not use list and you can become amazing. And so that's probably the part that makes me feel most like crying or something when I think about the do not use list. I'm serious. Like, it chokes me up to think that there are people that are being deprived of honest feedback that will continue to repeat behaviors they shouldn't, or will continue to not do things that are expected, and no one is going to tell them, and they can't win. They're in an unwinnable spot. And I feel very responsible as an individual leader to not allow that to happen, like, and not just inside my business, like my family will be like, do you really have to give everyone feedback? And I try to pick my place and time, but I just feel like, and I'm open to feedback right back at me. I want it back too. We don't want to walk around with toilet paper on our shoe or spinach in our teeth if we can help it. And I'm serious. And letting people do that in your business is super uncool. Mm-hmm. So I just think it's on each of us individually. I'm afraid that we could leave this conversation and think institutionally, my firm really needs to change this. Yeah, I'll wait till they do.
It starts with us.
100% responsible. Yeah. And I could lead the way. I could get these skills and start learning some frameworks and pass them on and encourage other people to read them. And, I don't have to wait for the senior leaders to decide this is important. I can get on it all by myself.
No. So. Well, thank you as usual, Jen, for the conversation. And we appreciate you listening. And if you have any topics you would like us to talk about in the future, please let us know. Until next time, have a great weekend.